This is the fiscal framework. Let's go through it quickly so that we can follow the discussion. Every budget has a revenue expenditure, that is part A, on a cash basis, money coming in and then money going in as expenditure. Often your expenditure is higher, so you come to a deficit, right? Now remember, because the first part is cash, you have not added arrears. Arrears of contracts, arrears owing to school feeding, arrears owing, you haven't added that in the first portion. So in the second portion, you add arrears. Here the terminology changes. Instead of budget deficit, you normally have fiscal balances. But you can say it's budget deficit 1 before arrears, and then budget deficit 2 after you have added, arrears. And therefore that will give you budget deficit what? 2, right? After you have added arrears. Then occasionally when you have bushfires, the crisis which I was talking about, when you have excessive subsidy which you have been paid, when you have others, single spine or COVID costs, then you have something called exceptional arrears. They are exceptional because they come in, they are not normal, but they come in periodically and then you clear them. Also, sometimes you can have income like HIPIC revenue. Also, now we don't have any HIPIC revenue by the time they came in. So these are exceptional. One of the differences that we have had with this government, the current government, is that these exceptional expenditures, which past governments had put in the budget, right? You can see that we are putting in the framework, which means that it's in the budget. They decided to put it as a footnote. And that was part of the beginning of the problems, because when you take it out, then it means that your fiscal balance 3 or your budget deficit 3, we have 2, which is the normal arrears. Your 3 is the same as your 2. You are taking out the exceptional, but it is there to be financed, right? Whatever you do it, whether you do it outside the budget, you pay it outside budget to give good numbers or whatever, you have to finance it. This is where the fundamentals expose you, right? So what we have seen, you recall, is that we have had very good or solid deficit numbers. Then all of a sudden, debt became a big issue. Debt popped up. And then it started accelerating, 70%, whatever. And now we are above 80%. It has to be financed. And this is what, governors, refer to, Bank of Ghana, let me just say, refer to as calculating the deficit on a narrow basis or what? On a broad basis. On a narrow basis, you are taking certain things out. On a broad basis, you must add everything, which has been our budget tradition. Once you have amortization, that is, you borrow to finance the deficit, you have old debt, which is debt repayment or amortization. And then you come out with the amount that you are adding to the public debt. So this is the framework that we are going to follow. And this is the budget framework. If we understand this, we can follow every budget, particularly the appendices to the budget. It's only a matter of details. It gives a lot of information, a lot of details. And one day we'll do a dialogue series on the budget framework, particularly for our financial journalists, so that, we demystify, the budget. This is something I try to do whilst in office. I held periodical monthly briefings. I think we need to demystify what is in the budget, so that it's important that we can all follow. It is for our benefits. So we need to understand it, particularly financial journalists. So this is another series we'll do on this framework. This is something I teach, my students, particularly the postgraduate students. So you can see the framework being repeated. This is our budget. The numbers are our budget. The revenue, expenditure, deficit, right? So you see that is our first fiscal deficit 1. Then you come to arrears. It gives you fiscal deficit 2. Then you have your fiscal balance, including arrears and discrepancy. Discrepancy are, now you see that we have to add bailout separately, right? And that is what was being shown as a footnote. Immediately you add it, then you are going to the old way of calculating, the deficit. So this is our budget, from 2013 to date. 2013 because the rebasing, because we use GDP, this is a percentage of GDP, not nominal. Because we did a rebasing starting from 2013, it becomes objective. It also looks political, but this is the primary basis is because of the GDP. Now, you will notice, is there a lighter here, please? You will notice, if you look at the yellow line, horizontal, you see something occurring. You see a 2.3. Now, you see that 2.3. Now, you will see that it did not have an antecedent and a precedent. Right? Before it, there was no line, 0, 0, 0. After it, is 0, 0, 0. This is what we've been calling about the offset. Remember, 2017, it was said that the NDC had left, Prma administration had left, a deficit of 10.3, which is the 8.1 you see there, right? Why was it not, spread so that it can be paid like we did with the single spine? That is because it was offset. Now, when you see below the 8.1, you see another 1.3, right? That 1.3, you can see is close to the 2.3. That is an offset. And it leaves you with 1. So what was actually carried forward was 1. So the actual deficit for 2017 was not 2016 was not 10.3, it's 6.1. But we're told that a fiscal consolidation occurred in 2017. If it occurred in 2017, and the adjustments were in 2016, then was it the Prma administration that did it? Remember, these numbers were no longer under the control of the previous administration. This is the first problem that we had, the offset, right, which did not repeat itself. So this, if you recall, this was also the 7 billion, which was referred to the Auditor General, which the Auditor General said 5 billion was disallowed. You see, only 2 billion was carried forward. What happened? They were paid. So this is the first problem. We are looking at where the problems are. The second one is the bailout cost. And the thing about the bailout cost, you can see in the last but one line, is that they did not occur every year, despite having ESLA. Despite we having ESLA, they did not occur every year. They were sporadic. So when we come to the graph, you will see that the arrears and the bailout cost, that's the deep brown, occurs occasionally. And anytime they occur, you see the deficit, which is the line, going down, deepening, becoming, becoming very heavy. And we'll come back to this. It explains the difference in the 2020 budget. The cumulative effect is what happened in the 2020 budget and the revised 2020 budget, which included COVID, which I was saying has two components. That is the COVID and the non-COVID. So if we are going to find solutions, one is systemic, right? It's the result of bailouts showing ESLA, but not showing, the bailout cost. Energy is not even part of the bailouts in many of the bailouts that are shown, right? That is also left out. There was an attempt to put it, as added to amortization. So you have, these as the factors, which led to the cumulative increase in the non-COVID increase from 4.7% to 13% if you include the bailout, 11% if you exclude the bailout. So we keep insisting until we are corrected that there are two components of the problem on hand, right? Because COVID with vaccine hopefully will go like many crises, but we'll be left with how to find a solution. And the question therefore is, the picture going forward, you can see the deficit is not the block lines, they are the lines that are below. It's supposed to be improving, right? But towards the end, it has improved and gone up because they do not include, the last 2 years do not include bailout costs. The fun thing is that the bailout costs will last. It does not include energy, the energy bailout, right? If energy costs are going to be zero in 2023 and 2024, how come was ESLA increase? How come do we have all those other levies increase, right? And we're told they will lapse at the end of what? 2024. In the case of ESLA, it has been, the bond is actually, 10 years, sometimes 20 years. So how and why are we raising money in anticipation of a debt which is supposed to, in any event, then it should have lasted up to 2022, right, if you are going to show. So this is where we are asking whether this projection that is being made there, right, are we really going to hit the 5%, right, or like the prior numbers, immediately they surface, then we realize that we have another problem. And these are what we think should go into, a program. Okay. So these are the main causes. I mentioned the offset, right? You can also see from the earlier graphs, you see you have percentage of, will come to the revenue. But you see that the percentage numbers are virtually the same. The last time we hit, revenue hit, anything 17.5% was in 2015. We have not hit 17%. But more importantly, the numbers that have been published, if you express them as a percentage of the GDP that was given to us, none hit 17%. Yet we are told that as a middle income country, and this is the goal, we should be raising tax revenue, not total revenue, of 20%. Here, our total revenue is not even up to 20%, let alone the tax revenue. The highest, again, you can see, okay, we'll come to that later on. So that's the first problem. That's the stagnant revenue. But you have the expenditure also being high. It's supposed to be going down, you can see in the last few years. But we have already said that if you take this to be expenditure and you look at it as you come down, then you will see that after you add arrears and the 000 last but 1, you can see in the blue, the 3 zeros that you have there at the end of the year. If there is any bailout, if there is any exceptional cost that arises, it means that you cannot meet that deficit. And that means that our deficit will remain high. Okay, so this is like a conclusion based on the numbers that we may not be doing enough in either raising revenue, right, or cutting expenditure, right, to be able to, meet the targets that we have set. The numbers are what we are talking about, right? And then where still, it doesn't include, you can see that the arrears are much lower. We'll come to all of this later on. I just want to set the stage. So we have, in summary, offsets, stagnant and declining revenues, but you have expenditures that are high, mostly on consumption. We all know the numbers by now, mostly on consumption. You can see that the amount we are allocating for capital is very narrow, and we are borrowing to even pay loan. Exceptional expenditure, I've said it, we are pushing it into footnotes. And because of this, the multilateral institutions like the IMF and the World Bank and the rating agencies started making their own adjustments to our numbers. You remember that it was Moody's that first predicted, apart from the internal predictions, that we would reach 80%, of debt. They said it back in October, thereabout, November, right? So this again shows the adjustments. So to get a good picture, you can see that we have the fiscal balance, but you have to make adjustments for the exceptional costs, and then you can see the adjustments which the IMF made in the Article 4 in 2019. As far back as 2019, the IMF started to make adjustments. That's with the blue we painted. Where we said our deficit was 3.7, they said no, it's 7. Where we said it's 4.7, they said no, it's 7.5. That's if you add. They use the expression headline, deficit and whatever. For the first time, this terminology was increased. So ladies and gentlemen, what we are saying is that if we want to see the prospects going forward and whether the budget, has what it takes to bring the country back, less borrowing and whatever, it seems that it is based on certain assumptions which appear to be shaky, right? So the other issue we have is non-compliance with the PRMA. The PRMA was designed to provide stabilization for the budget. We have a very good example. When we hit COVID, we took $250 million US straight from the stabilization fund. That was the first money we took, right? In 2015, when we had the fall in crude oil prices, we took about $250 million, but it was Ghana cedis, not dollars, right? So you just add the exchange rate. Now, we are not putting money. You remember we lowered the cap twice, and so not much is being left in the stabilization fund. And that means that in the next 4 years, if anything should hit us, there's no petroleum revenues flowing into the stabilization fund. And the cap was not restored during the budget. And this is where the interest, of the natural resource people, come in. It is something to do with the budget. It's something to do with the soundness of the budget. We also had a heritage fund, which we attempted to take out to meet, recurrent expenditure. There was resistance to this. Then we have the infrastructure fund also from oil revenue, so that we can do commercial, loans for commercial projects like Terminal 3, MPS, Prma, and others which we initiated, from the oil revenue, because we all say that the oil revenue is used for small projects. So the importance of the infrastructure fund was to enable us to do the big infrastructure which can pay for itself. That also is dry. In fact, there were no flows, right? Then we used the sinking fund for the first time to pay off 550 million of the first sovereign bond, which was issued during the Kufuor administration, His Excellency Kufuor's administration, right? That has also virtually ceased. There's some refinancing and debt payment that is taking place on the domestic front, but we will see from the debt numbers when we come there that it is not deep enough. So this should be concerned, how we are using the oil revenue. Because remember what I said, the PRMA was designed to tackle issues and problems that we have had with the budget, right? And so that is a very important question on the anniversary, important anniversary of, So we're saying again, repetition, we either do a homegrown, or as we couldn't succeed with the PSI, you may be forced into a fund program. And if we do not have a reasonable homegrown, then it means that, we are stuck, in a sense with what it's.